30 to 40. Rows 30 to 40.
A man looks around nervously in a crowded airport, checking over his shoulder, looking around corners. He runs, but no one chases. Yet somehow, that's the last anyone ever saw of him. Welcome back to Legends May Live. I'm Drew, and today we're digging into the wild story of a man who left behind everything with a final, terrified sprint into oblivion. A quick note before we begin. All of our stories are true or allegedly true. Sometimes there are conflicting sources or gaps that we have to fill in, so take it for what it is. Entertainment, not a documentary. For Lars Mittank, the summer of 2014 was going good. He was a tall, slim 28-year-old living in northern Germany. Lars kept mostly to himself, kind of bordering on shy but confident. And though he wasn't this social butterfly, the relationships he had with his family and those that he had built with friends were dear to him. He had this kind of middle-of-the-road sort of life. He wasn't rich or flashy, but he had what he needed, and he was content. So when his friends invited him on a summer getaway, the idea of a cheap flight, cold beer, long nights by the ocean sounded really great, and Lars said yes without hesitation. They would be heading to Golden Sands. It was a beach resort town on Bulgaria's eastern coast, where tourists say is the kind of place where the sunsets are always breathtaking and the drinks always feel a little stronger than you'd expect. Lars and his 4 friends, all in their 20s, got to the airport, and even though there's this chaos of checking bags and getting into the right terminal on time, life's stresses still seemed to just melt away. For now, it was just 5 good friends, fun and adventure ahead. They laughed, joked, and talked about everything they wanted to do when they got to the Golden Sands. Soon they boarded the plane and were up in the air, leaving behind the mundane day-to-day. They touched down around 2 hours later, and they gathered their bags and called a taxi to take them from the Varna airport to a nearby hotel just a couple blocks from the beach. And for a while, everything was perfect. Lars and his friends take to the beach the first chance they get. Lars is just laughing in the surf, dancing in the sand, just enjoying life in the sun. Shirtless, glasses on, a cheap Bulgarian beer in hand, and waves crashing on the beach. It was this kind of trip that you'd probably remember forever. By day, they lounged on the beach and played soccer in the sand. By night, they'd hit the bars and clubs. Golden Sands is one of those party spots. Think Ibiza on a budget. It brought people from all over. It was this mix of Russian tourists, British backpackers, and German travelers like them. The whole area was just loud, colorful, and full of life. And though Lars was more reserved than the rest, he was still enjoying himself and all the time he got with his friends. But by the 4th day of the trip, the group had spent the day sunburned and half drunk, making up soccer chants in the sand and just trying to figure out what bar had the best happy hour. And by nighttime, the main street lit up like a carnival. There were neon signs buzzing, thumping bass, crowds of tourists spilling into the streets. This was the kind of place where strangers became drinking buddies in minutes, especially if you liked the same football club. And that may have been where things went wrong. According to his friends, Lars got into a brief argument that night with a group of locals, possibly Bulgarian men, just outside of a McDonald's. And the argument was about soccer, or football to non-Americans. Lars supported Werder Bremen. The other group supported Bayern Munich. And if you know anything about European football, or really American football either, you know how fast it can turn from friendly banter to genuine hostility. And no one knows exactly what was said, but his friends weren't there for the exchange, but words were exchanged, voices raised, and Lars came back saying that he had been punched in the ear. And he brushed it off at first and said, it's not a big deal, no need to end the night or anything like that. But the next morning, he woke up in pain. His ear had swollen and his hearing was off. He was just feeling dizzy too, so he's pretty annoyed, but he decides he needs to see a doctor. And he found one nearby, and when the doctor checked him out, he told Lars that the issue was a ruptured eardrum. And it wasn't life-threatening, but Lars really didn't need to be flying because air pressure changes from the flight, according to the doctor, could cause further damage. So the group made a quick decision. Lars said to just go back home without him. It was fine. He would just stick around for a couple more days to heal, and then he would fly back alone. His friends were reluctant at first. They really didn't want to leave him, but Lars insisted it was fine, that he would rest up, maybe explore a little bit, and catch a flight later in the week. It's really no big deal. And so they said their goodbyes at the airport, joked around for a bit, and took one last photo before parting ways. And then just like that, Lars Mittank was on his own in a foreign country. After his friends left Bulgaria, Lars checked into a new place. It was the small rundown hotel near the airport. It was Hotel Color, a boxy concrete building with flickering hallway lights and paper-thin walls. It was really just one of those places you stay because you have to, not because you want to. But it was cheap, close to the airport, and as one traveler put it, it was fine if you don't mind sketchy people and strange noises at night. So, after Lars got settled into his new room, this really went downhill fast. Over the next 24 hours, Lars began sending a series of increasingly bizarre and frantic messages to his mother. There were texts, phone calls, the short, urgent bursts. He tells her things like he doesn't feel safe, that people are following him, and that someone's trying to kill him. He begs her to cancel his credit card. He says he's being watched and he can hear voices outside his room. And he says things like, they're trying to drug me. And of course, Sandra, his mother, is confused and scared. Her son wasn't one to make things up or be overly dramatic. Lars was responsible, rational, and reserved, if anything. And now he's calling from Bulgaria in the middle of the night, whispering that he's in danger. She doesn't know what to think or how to help. All she can do is listen and just try to keep him calm, while inside she was terrified for her son. Then Lars says something that turns her blood cold. "They're coming for me," he whispers. "I'm hiding." And then, line just goes dead. And so his mother sits there nervously, staring at her phone, hoping and just needing him to call her and say that everything's okay. But hours pass and she doesn't hear from him. And then, sometime in the early morning hours, Lars quietly returns to the hotel. It's the middle of the night in Varna, Bulgaria, and inside the hotel, Lars is pacing. He's told his mother he's afraid, he's heard voices outside, he thinks someone's coming for him, and he doesn't know what to do. But eventually, after pacing back and forth for hours, Lars leaves the hotel in the early morning. But no one sees him leave. It's like he had been spending that time figuring out a way to get out of the hotel without being noticed, and he succeeded. And mind you, he had gotten to the hotel from who knows where, and now he's left again. And for nearly 7 hours, Lars is completely off the grid. No one hears from him at all, whether text, call, or just catching sight of him out in the streets. And when he finally comes back, he's different. The hotel staff notice right away. He's more on edge now than ever. He's constantly looking over his shoulder, and at this point, his anxiety has him a little twitchy. They say he was visibly shaken, like he had been running and hiding. He doesn't mention where he went or what happened. He just goes straight to his room, stays quiet, doesn't speak to anyone, just totally keeps to himself. It's like whatever had spooked him the night before had just been this truly traumatic experience. And he doesn't check out. He doesn't call for a cab or make any sort of effort to get to the airport like he's trying to go home. Instead, he just isolates. He just sits in his hotel room alone, curtains drawn, lights off, waiting. And then finally, he makes another phone call to his mother. And she's so relieved to see his number flash across her phone. And she picks it up and just says, "Where have you been? Are you all right? I've been worried sick." And as he answers, he's still whispering. And he's still convinced that someone is out to get him. But now there's something else in his tone, this kind of resignation. He's just exhausted both mentally and physically. He's feeling hopeless, and it's all just too much. He's kind of at his breaking point here. But still, before they hang up, he tells her that he'll go to the airport the next morning, and he says he'll see her soon. And she's still worried, but not totally sure what to be worried about. If there was really someone out to get Lars, or if he was just having some kind of mental breakdown. Either way, he told her he would be coming home the next morning, and she believed him, and was looking forward to just putting all of this behind them, maybe getting some clarity on what actually happened, and just finally get back to normal. So by this time, it's July 8th, 2014, 8 days after he had first arrived in Varna, and true to his word, Lars steps on to Varna Airport clutching a small travel bag. He hasn't slept, he hasn't eaten, or told anyone where he had been the night before, but he told his mother he was coming home, and that's what he was trying to do. His first stop was to the airport medical clinic. Since he still needed clearance to fly because of his ear injury, the ruptured eardrum could potentially still cause pressure damage during the flight, but doctors say he's fine and that he was cleared for takeoff. But just as Lars is wrapping up the checkup, another man walks into the room. And he wasn't a doctor or a nurse, and some reports say that he was a construction worker. Others say he was dressed like an airport staff member. He had on a high-visibility vest, and some say a tool belt, but no name tag. No one knows what he said or if he even spoke at all. But the moment he entered the room, Lars changed. His eyes go wide, and immediately he starts breathing faster. He stands up fast, and in a quiet, panicked voice, he says to the doctor, "I don't want to die here." And then he bolts straight out of the clinic. He didn't even try to grab anything. He left his bag, passport, wallet, phone, just everything. He just had one goal, and that was to get out of there as fast as possible. And after he's out of the clinic, he just keeps sprinting. And he goes through the terminal, then turns sharply down a hallway, dashes across the main lobby. Security cameras catch glimpses of him, just wide-eyed, panicked, fleeing. And then he throws himself through the security door, out into the bright Bulgarian morning. He rushes to the fence, climbs up, jumps over it, and beyond that, there's a patch of woods where he darted into and vanished. And that is the last time anyone saw Lars Mittank. The CCTV footage is grainy with muted colors, kind of stiff motion, and there was no audio. But it captures a moment that's now been watched millions of times. Lars Mittank wearing a yellow t-shirt, beige pants, black sneakers. He sprints down the sterile white hallway of Varna Airport. He doesn't look back, doesn't hesitate. At one point, he turns down a narrow passage between two waiting areas, and he's acting like he's being chased, but no one is behind him. In the clip, he bursts through a side door, and it was this restricted exit leading toward the airport's outer perimeter. Outside, the cameras capture him racing across the parking lot, toward the fence line, separating from the airport, and just going straight to the woods. It's one of the weirdest disappearances ever caught on video, because what you're watching isn't a criminal on the run, or a man with a plan. It just seems like someone running from something invisible, maybe even something imagined. But whatever it was, real or not, Lars believed it was enough to leave behind everything. By the time police arrived at the perimeter of Varna Airport, Lars is long gone. No one has any idea how far he ran or in what direction after he got to the woods, but the one thing that they do know for sure is that he was gone in under 2 minutes. And right away, local authorities begin searching the surrounding woods, and they go all out. They bring in tracking dogs, aerial support, volunteers, heat sensors. But still, with all these resources, they found nothing. There was no trace of Lars, not even footprints. And the area that he ran to, it's not remote either. There are roads, farmhouses, and plenty of people nearby. If he made it out of the woods, someone should have seen him, but no one did. The working theory is that he just kept on running until at some point collapsed from either exhaustion or injury. But the glaring problem there is that if it's true, it still doesn't start to explain whether he's dead, alive, where he is, or where his body is. Still to this day, no personal items have ever been recovered, nor has any body, bones, or scraps of his clothing. But in this search, soon, the searchers had to face chilling reality. Either Lars ran farther than they thought possible, or he never left that field at all. Lars' mother, Sandra Mittank, she's been looking for her son since the summer of 2014, and she's never stopped. For so long, she's carried the weight of a mystery that just has no real shape. She's replayed their final phone calls in her head over and over. You know, his words, "They're following me. I'm hiding. I don't want to die here." She says she remembers the way his voice sounded on the last call. Not angry, not panicked, but just small. Like he was shrinking. Like he knew something was about to happen and he was just deflated. He couldn't stop it. Still, Sandra refused to give up. She posted flyers in German and Bulgarian. She shared photos and contact info with local police. She posted appeals online, even worked with journalists to produce a YouTube video which now has over 1 million views. In it, she looks directly at the camera, red eyes, voice trembling, and pleads for her son to come home. She says, "Lars, if you see this, we miss you. Please, just call me." But Lars never called. Over the years, there have been alleged sightings. Men who look like him in Canada, Portugal, Romania. People claiming they saw a tall man, thin, with German features, living homeless, confused, and sometimes silent. Sandra chased every lead, often paying out of pocket just to verify a photo or track down a location. Each one led nowhere, and today the case is still open. Lars' face appears on German missing person sites beneath a caption that simply reads, "Disappeared in Varna, Bulgaria. Last seen July 8th, 2014. Age at disappearance, 28. Believed to still be alive." Sandra believes her son might be out there somewhere, wandering, afraid, maybe with no memory of who he is. Or maybe still running from whatever real or imagined thing he was running from all those years ago. In trying to figure out what happened, there are many ideas. The explanation that seems the most grounded and most accepted is mental illness. Specifically, paranoid schizophrenia. It fits, at least on paper. Lars was 28 years old when he disappeared, and that's important because schizophrenia often develops in young men between the ages of 20 and 30. It's subtle at first. Paranoia, isolation, a sense that someone or something is watching you. He reported being followed, believing people were trying to drug him. He whispered on the phone, hid in silence, ran barefoot from an unseen threat. All signs consistent with a psychotic break. But here's where it gets harder to accept. Because Lars had no prior symptoms. He had no history of delusion or hospitalizations. He wasn't on any medications, and there was no odd behavior reported by his friends or family. And even when mental illness does emerge suddenly, it doesn't usually come with this much coordination. This wasn't just a man unraveling, it was a man making calculated choices. He changed hotels, withdrew money, avoided surveillance, made contact with his mother, and then, when he sensed the threat again, he ran. There's a difference between irrational fear and targeted survival behavior. And Lars, it didn't seem like he was just scared, but more like he was preparing for something. Something he never described and something no one else could see, but something that, to him, was very real. The mental illness theory is clean. It's logical, predictable, comfortable in the way that tragic explanations sometimes are, but for a lot of people it just doesn't sit right. Because Lars was acting like someone who was in trouble, not like someone in delusion. And that's opened the floodgates for darker possibilities. Some internet sleuths believe that Lars stumbled into something he wasn't supposed to see, or that he was marked. Bulgaria has documented issues with black market medical activity, illegal clinics, harvested organs, doctors willing to look the other way. It's not impossible. He did visit 2 medical facilities, one for his ear, one at the airport, and what if he realized something was wrong too late? What if he wasn't imagining the danger, but was already inside the clinic when he found it? Still, others wonder about the fight at McDonald's. They say, what if it wasn't random? What if it was staged, a way to isolate him, injure him, keep him in Bulgaria after his friends flew home? What if they wanted him alone? Or perhaps that fight was just with the wrong man. Then there are more out there ideas. Electronic surveillance, covert testing. Some believe Lars was targeted for experimentation, either by local authorities or a foreign agency. When he said, "They're following me, they're trying to drug me, I don't want to die here," was that delusions or whistleblower phrases? But then there are those who believe that Lars saw something he could never explain. Something he didn't have words for, something that made no sense but was real. A crack in the world, a glitch, something that shouldn't have been there. No matter which theory you believe, one truth remains. Lars didn't just disappear, he ran like a man whose life depended on it. It's been over a decade and his bank account's been untouched and his phone silent. There's no confirmed sightings and no body. There's just a 28-second video and a mother who still desperately waits for the phone to ring. If you've seen Lars or heard from him, his family still hopes, still prays, and still searches, because somewhere out there, maybe behind a false name, maybe wandering, maybe hiding, there's a man in a yellow shirt running through the trees, and we still don't know what he was running from. Thanks for listening to Legends May Live. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and follow the show for more mysteries that stretch the boundaries of what we think we know. I'm Drew, and until next time, keep your eyes open and keep a lookout, because you never know what may be lurking in the shadows.